If you get plantar fasciitis or have plantar fascial pain, this may be the worst thing you could do for it. Now, I understand that rolling a ball on the bottom of the foot, it feels good. And for some situations, it's an appropriate tool. But a lot of times plantar fasciitis, it's not because the tissue's tight, it's because it's weak, and that's what you're driving into. So to know whether this is an appropriate exercise, we want to see what can we do with our foot and our toes. If you can lift your big toe about 45 degrees and then you can overpress it, you probably don't have a tight plantar fascia. Now, if we look at simple physics, energy moves to the area of least resistance. If the foot moves well and the big toe moves well, when we walk or run, energy goes into that foot. But we have to start asking ourselves, why are we using that foot excessively and in that way? So we're going to go through some joint sequences through the ankle and the hip and see if we have some restrictions in there. Because if we do, that could be contributing to our plantar fasciitis. Plantar fasciitis is a very common condition and a big source of pain for a lot of people. But just rubbing it out and trying to overstretch it may be the worst thing you could be doing. So in this video, I'm going to show you a sequence of self-assessment to find out what could be contributing to your plantar fasciitis and how to fix the problem. So the first test we want to look at a knee to wall test. Now simply just take your fist, put it up against the wall, put your foot here. Now this is our basic minimum standard. If we have more range of motion, awesome. But we want to see, can you use your measurements and see if you can get your knee to the wall with no excessive stretching in the back here and no pinch in the front. Now, if we are restricted and we feel tightness in the back, we might have a soft tissue restriction, some trigger points. If we're getting a pinch in the front, we may have some joint restrictions that need to be addressed to get or restore that ankle dorsiflexion for proper gait. Now, if there's hip restrictions for hip extension, we could simply use a straight leg raise test, because when I straighten my right leg, I'm falling into relative extension with the left leg. If this is limited, it could be tightness in the hamstring here, but it also could be a restriction in hip extension on this side. So we're going to show some exercises on how to mobilize and open up that hip with the ankle. So to improve that hip extension, we're going to get a band and we're going to tie it around the hip here. We're going to put some good tension on this. Now, when I'm doing this, I want to make sure that I'm nice and stacked here, glutes on, and simply just lunging forward. So I only feel stretch in the front of the hip here. I'm going to contract that glute and I'm going to just pulse in and out. If this isn't enough for you and you want a little bit more challenge, you can come on up into a split stance position. And now I'm also working on deceleration here, but I'm also working on flexing or mobilizing the toes if I need to as well. So I can get a little bit more active stretch through the hip as well as control with that. And then to improve that ankle dorsiflexion, we're going to take a smaller band. We're going to place it just below the bumps, the malleoli here, around that talus, get some good stretch on there, and we're going to mobilize and directing our knee towards that pinky toe. So we're going to create a glide to create some space both in the front and the back of the joint here. From here, I can add some strength. So I can do some calf raises into this range. And then if there is some soft tissue restriction in the back of the knee, I can simply come up and I can do some calf raises into a bit of a stretch here. So I can kind of come out, put that hip into a little bit of extension. Now I can feel a little bit more stretch on the back of the leg, and I can do some calf raises in this position. And then lastly, we want to tie it all together, both the foot, the ankle, the hip, with a little bit of core activation with some standing fire hydrants. And by rotating and working on that balance and loading through the foot and creating a nice stable base, I can feel my glutes working with the foot, creating a nice solid foundation so that when I'm doing propulsion, hopefully I'm doing more with the hip and less with the foot. And then we can progress this into more of a tiny dancer or airplanes. So we come down, we pivot. This is really stretching the backside. My foot, ankle, and hip are all working extremely hard with this to control balance and to control energy moving through the lower extremity. Now, these are just a few exercises to start to alleviate some of your plantar fascial pain. I know there's lots more exercises that need to be built on top of this for propulsion and for power production. But if our goal is to redistribute forces through the body to stop beating up and unload that painful tissue, this is a great place to start. I hope you found this information helpful. If you want to know more on how to increase the precision of your practice, to look at the body from a more holistic perspective and to, really expand your knowledge in the orthopedic field, head over to amtcertified.com and become certified today.